Hello and welcome to the sixth and most likely last episode of Full Court Press. My name is Chris Murphy, and to my right is Colton Poole.
Hello.
Who one of his favorite players is Vinny Testaverde for some weird reason.
I'm not afraid to admit that.
And we are Forum Sports reporters, and we are going to talk about sports. We got a lot of North Dakota football to talk about, and we're going to start with 9-man. We're just going to go through each game, and Colton's going to tell us why you should watch. And the opening one, New Salem versus North Prairie. Colton, go.
Yeah, so New Salem last week they beat Divide County 42-22, while North Prairie beat Mott Regent New England 64-62. New Salem, I believe, is number 2 in the QRF, while North Prairie is number 5. Their only loss, North Prairie's, is to Thompson. And New Salem has beaten everyone this season by at least 2 touchdowns, including Divide County in the playoffs. So, except Bismarck, Shiloh Christian. So I think I see New Salem moving on 28-14.
Oh, you picked a score.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I went above and beyond here.
Oh, wow. All right. Beach and Shiloh Christian.
Beach is tied for 10th in the QRF. They beat Mohall, Lansford, Sherwood 32-12, and is
that the law office of?
No, that does sound like a law office. Beach is the number 3 seed out of Region 5, and Mohall was the number 1 seed out of Region 6. So that was a really impressive win to get to this point. So, but with that being said, Shiloh Christian is 4th in the QRF and at home, and they're a Bismarck school. They're always tough to beat. So I'd say Shiloh Christian 35-14.
Okay, you have this one listed as match of the week. Napoleon Gackle Streeter versus Cavalier. Why?
But both of these teams are kind of got some momentum from the regular season. Napoleon is the number 1 seed out of Region 3, and Cavalier is the number 1 seed out of Region 2. However, Cavaliers, they're at the very top of the QRF, and they've blown out everyone except this season, except Thompson in the first game of the season, but then beat them 58-20 in the playoffs.
It's a good comeback.
So, yeah, and then Napoleon Gackle Streeter is 6th in the QRF, and they beat Hankinson 21-14. That's a really, really close win at home there in the playoffs. So, I would say this one has to go to Cavalier. I'll say 38-34.
Okay. And then who would face Cavalier would be the winner of Wyndmere Lidgerwood versus Mayport CG, which Colton will be.
I will be at. And so, yeah, that's also gonna be a really interesting game. Wyndmere is the number 3 in the QRF. QRF, by the way, is kind of a way to qualify rankings across the state for teams who haven't really played each other based on how
people love it or hate it.
Yeah, right. So, but anyway, Wyndmere is number 3 and Mayport CG is 23rd. Mayport they are the number 4 seed out of Region 1. And they beat Linton HMB 22-16 in the first round, and Nelson County 38-8 in the second round to even get to this point. But Wyndmere beat Mayport 58-19 on the road in September earlier in the regular season. So I'd have to say Wyndmere Lidgerwood, they keep going on a roll, and they win 49-26.
Okay. We move on to 1A, and we bring up seemingly impossible to beat Hillsboro, Central Valley, and Carrington.
So Hillsboro, they're top of the QRF. They've shut out 4 teams in an undefeated season. Last week we talked about Fargo-Oak Grove's Ben Hogarth and EEK's Clayton Gurnich and how they have over 7,000 career yards, whereas this Hillsboro team held them to 195 combined yards. Those 2 are running backs, by the way. They held them to 195 yards over a 2-week span in those 2 wins over those 2 teams. So this defense is performing out of their minds. Carrington, they're number 7 in the QRF, and they beat Oak Grove 20-14 at home in the first round of the playoffs, whereas Hillsboro beat West Hope, Newburgh, Glenburn 39-8. But Carrington with a loss to Langdon, area Munich, and they beat Oak Grove, like I said. So the Hillsboro defense playing so well, I think it's possible to not pick them. I'll take 34-12 Hillsboro Central Valley.
Okay, Delax Burlington at Dickinson Trinity.
So Dickinson Trinity, they are fourth in the QRF, and they had a really ugly loss to Bowman County in the first game of the regular season. Bowman County is not traditionally a powerhouse in football. So, and they didn't even make the playoffs this year. But Trinity hasn't allowed a single touchdown for the rest of the regular season and beat Shanley 47-6 in the first round of the playoffs. But Delax Burlington, they're eighth in QRF with a loss to Velva Sawyer, and they beat Killdeer 22-0 in the first round. And when you're trying to compare teams who haven't played each other yet, you find a mutual opponent. Trinity beat Killdeer at Killdeer 33-0 earlier in the season. So I'll take Trinity at home, number 4 seed, 35-7.
Okay, we move on to the last game that we got. Beulah at Velva.
So, in looking at these, I got to pick an upset. So Velva, they are tied for first in the QRF and have only allowed 4 touchdowns in the regular season. They beat Hazen 40-7 in the first round. But Beulah is fifth in the QRF, and their only loss is 21-0 at Trinity. Beulah beat Hazen 38-0 and Bishop Ryan 38-7, who Velva beat 42-13. So you could easily say that this is going to be a really close game, Velva being the number 2 seed at home. So, but I'd say that someone is going to lose in an upset, and this is easily the closest matchup of the week in the single A playoffs. I'm going to take Beulah with an upset on the road, 22-21.
Okay, Class 2A, yeah, you go.
So, just a couple scores real quick here. Central Cass beat Valley City 27-6. But we really wanted to talk about Fargo-Shanley beating Devil's Lake 38-7. And
not so much because of the game.
Not so much because of the game. At the very end, famous superfan Fargo-Shanley's Joe Keller, he is wheelchair bound. He suffers from muscular dystrophy. And at the very end of the game, Devil's Lake, they took a knee, which we'll talk about that. But then setting up Fargo-Shanley for this play at the very end of the game, Joe Keller, he takes a handoff in his wheelchair and goes for a 65-yard touchdown. Really touching story.
Yeah, incredible. And it was just very cool that Devil's Lake, took a knee. I mean, they could have scored again. They could have scored, but they took a knee. They let Shanley run that last play, which was just you hear so much about teenagers being, obnoxious and smart alecky and stuff like that. But then you see stuff like that, and it's wonderful. It changes your thoughts about something. Like, there's good stories out there, and that's just a super cool thing. And if you looked at Joe Keller's Twitter account, it was just everybody was all over it, talking, saying nice things to him, and it was cool to see the reach because I saw Perham kids saying stuff to him, and this kid has touched a lot of people just by being who he is. Super nice kid, and that's great.
I see him a lot at
he's everywhere.
Yeah, he's everywhere whenever you cover a Shanley game. And just really awesome to see. Real quick, he's suffered from muscular dystrophy, a group of muscle diseases characterized by progressive weakness and degeneration of skeletal muscles that control movement, which has made him so he needed leg braces when he was much younger, but in 4th grade he got his motorized wheelchair. And so but you would recognize him even if he didn't have the wheelchair. He is the super fan, as his Twitter handle says. I think it's Deacon
super fan.
Yeah, which is so perfect. So super awesome to see a really special moment.
And he did tell me that he is trying to decide between Notre Dame and Alabama to play football. He's got offers from both, but that Jerry Jones for the Dallas Cowboys has contacted him about possibly just, skipping college and just playing in the NFL, which, I wouldn't put it past him. So anyway, let's get into the 2 matchups that we have in 2A playoffs. First off, we have Wahpeton and Devil's Lake.
Real
Go.
quick, I apologize. We missed a playoff game in the single A playoffs. I'm going to real quick take number 3 Langdon area, Edmore, Munich over Ellendale, Edgeley-Colm. They're at home and the number 3 seed. So I'll
Wait,
take.
you're having Edgeley lose or Ellendale?
I do. They're Langdon's at home and playing well this season. So
Okay.
Ellendale did beat Harvey Wells County 49-24, but Langdon beat Kindred 31-0. I'll take the momentum. Langdon.
So the champs are out.
21-14.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's go back to 2A and hopefully not screw up again. And we'll go back to Wahpeton and Devil's Lake.
So number 6 Wahpeton versus number 3 Devil's Lake. Devil's Lake, who's 6-3, they lost to St. Mary's and Shanley, like everyone has basically in 2A this year. They lost to Wahpeton 48-46 in 6 overtimes in Wahpeton on September 29th. But Wahpeton is 4-4, and they lost to St. Mary's 35-0. Shanley 14-8 in a really close one, as well as Watford City 20-14 and Grafton 20-8. 4 of Devil's Lake's wins were by 2 touchdowns or less, and Wahpeton has lost in several close games. Considering that Wahpeton beat them last time in a really close game, I'll have Wahpeton winning again in a really close game, 14-13.
Okay. Now we have Watford City and Jamestown.
Number 5 Watford City versus number 4 Jamestown. Jamestown beat Watford City 43-6 earlier in the regular season. They lost to Shanley 14-7.
I was at that game. Yeah. That was a toss-up.
Yeah. So, right, exactly. And St. Mary's 17-10, and Devil's Lake 14-13. So all of their losses are really close this year. Watford City, they started on a 3-game losing skid, and now are on a 6-game winning streak. This is a really long trip for Watford, though. I think that's like 4.5 to 5 hours for Watford City to Jamestown. And against a team that's really a matchup problem for Watford City, I'll take Jamestown 33-12. But moving on, both of those teams are going to have really tough matchups against Bismarck, St. Mary's, and Fargo Shanley.
Really?
So, shocker. But both of those games are going to be really interesting to watch.
Okay, move on to 3A. What do you got?
So West Fargo Cheyenne, huge matchup for them. They beat Fargo South 21-20 in a really close game. And that was for the number 2 seed in the 3A playoffs. So that was a really vital game. It was amazing how Cheyenne would not give up on the run game, even if they were down by 2 touchdowns. They were still chewing away clock with long drives on like a 10-minute drive that didn't even end in a touchdown. So Jason Gallrap, they just kept giving it up to him in the middle, 5 yards, 7 yards, 8 yards. They could not stop him. So they're going to be a really interesting team to watch. Now moving on to the playoffs. So first off, East Region number 4 seed Fargo Davies versus West Region number 1 Cheyenne. Jacob Olson for Century.
No, you said West. You said Cheyenne at Century. Cheyenne's next.
What?
You said Cheyenne instead of Century.
Oh, I apologize.
You better.
Davies at Century, Bismarck Century. Jacob Olson for the Patriots for Century, not Cheyenne, has 960 yards on 14 touchdowns, their quarterback, and he only has 1 interception. Nathan Kraft has 479 yards on 107 carries and 7 touchdowns. Their only loss of the year is to Cheyenne, 16-14. But they beat Davies 38-25 in the regular season. Davies is led by Jesse Forknell with 1,530 yards through the air, completing 47.3% of his passes for 16 touchdowns and 5 picks. But their only wins are over Fargo North and the Grand Forks teams, so I'll take Century 48-12. Century is by far the better team, I'd say.
What about Minot at West Fargo Cheyenne?
So Minot, the number 3 seed out of the West versus number 2 seed West Fargo Cheyenne. West Fargo Cheyenne, Minot is 8-3 overall, and they lost to West Fargo 36-20 and beat Davies 59-32. whereas Legacy, and they beat Legacy 36-0, but lost to Century 38-7. Brett Davies leads the team with 382 yards on 78 carries. Creighton Rudolph, great quarterback for the Minot Magicians, has 1,301 yards on 74 of 119 passing and 12 touchdowns, while as Peyton Lamoureux has 38 catches for 756 yards as a receiver. Cheyenne is 7-2 overall. They beat Century 16-14 at home in a huge game, but lost to Legacy 44-42. And their only other losses to West Fargo. They are on a 6-game winning streak, including that South win. Jason Golrap, I'm doing a story about him for the West Fargo Pioneer. He leads the EDC with 1,123 rushing yards on 207 carries, 5.4 yards per carry and 14 touchdowns. Cheyenne held teams to 198 points, while Minot held teams to 162. But I like Cheyenne's ability to control the pace and style of the game, like I talked about with Jason Golrap. They can just run it up the middle and get constant gain. So even when South appeared to be getting away from them, like I said, in that South matchup, and Cheyenne stuck to their guns, like I said. So I like Cheyenne getting long, methodical drives and winning like they did against Century, 16-14.
Okay, what about Legacy versus West Fargo? Is anybody going to beat West Fargo?
Keep asking this, and the answer is usually no. Legacy is 5-4 this season. Matt Kraft leads them with 241 yards rushing on 53 carries. But West Fargo's undefeated, 9-0. Andy Gravdahl, he finished the season with a 62.4 completion percentage and 1,773 yards and 17 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. He's West Fargo's all-time passing leader. And he's been spreading the ball around to Joe Pistorius, who has 688 yards as a receiver and 5 touchdowns, and Jacob Faircloth, who has 31 catches and for 422 yards. So the Packers just added a further dimension with their offense, with their passing this year, and that's going to be really tough for Legacy to stop. I would say Legacy and West Fargo beat Legacy 39-7 in the regular season. Just... West Fargo is going to be so tough. I give them the edge in a long shot, 42-13.
Okay, what do you got for Fargo South and Bismarck?
Fargo South is the number 3 seed out of the East at West Fargo, at the West Region number 2 seed Bismarck. Bismarck 7-2 overall and beats South 41-14. Bismarck is led by Will Madler, who has 1,331 yards and 11 touchdowns through the air. Their only losses are to West Fargo 41-0 and Century 34-15. So, and they've outscored opponents 232 to 118. Real quick for Fargo South, Victor Isaac leads them with 446 yards on 111 carries and 6 touchdowns, while Tanner DuBois has 111 completions of 201 passes for 1,829 yards and 11 interceptions. Really good through the air this year. But this is a game where we remember how good the West region is. I think Fargo South is a good team, but Bismarck's that much better. I'll take Bismarck 47-20.
Lovely. I'm actually working on a feature story on Tanner DuBois this week. So look for that and buy the newspaper. It's a wonderful thing. All right. I just want a couple wrap-up things. We got state cross-country this week. So I want to talk Fargo Davies girls are number 1 in Class A. Alex Luz, all right. Alex Luz, who I'm actually also doing a feature story on where I just have to spell his name and not say it. Of Fargo North is ranked number 2 in Class A boys. He collapsed last year near the finish line when he was among the top 10. So that he's looking for redemption. Hillsboro Central Valley in Class B for girls is ranked 2. And for boys is ranked 2. Lena Crack from Haddon Northwood Thompson is number 2 for girls. And Isaac Huber from Edgeley Coombe is number 1 for Class B boys. So those are our locals. For volleyball for Minnesota, the 2 big ones, Park Rapids area is number 1, ranked or seeded number 1 in 8AA South and is 22-2 overall as we head into volleyball playoffs. They could run into Roseau for the 8AA title. Park Rapids, I believe, has never won a section title in volleyball, so this would be a big deal for them. And then in 6A, it's been Wadena Deer Creek all year, who actually is one of the 2 teams to beat Park Rapids this year. So in 6A, Wadena Creek is also looking for a section championship. So those are our 2 top-seeded volleyball area teams for Minnesota, and that is all.
All right. We hit a whole lot of teams here today. So, yeah, I think that's it for our episode of Full Court Press. Turns out this is not the last episode, like Murphy keeps telling us. So we'll be back next week. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks for the time.
Thanks.